All right, let's talk about something that's at the absolute core of every single modern business, but it's something we often ignore until, it breaks. Computer hardware. I mean, think about it. Few things have changed our world as radically as the computer. So today, we're going to get into it and see how these physical nuts and bolts can literally make or break a company. So right away, you might be thinking, hang on, I'm in marketing or I'm in sales, not IT. Why is this something I need to care about? And look, that's a totally fair question. You've got to be able to talk to the IT folks, make smart choices when it's your budget on the line, and maybe even get a spark of an idea for how new tech can give your company a real edge. But honestly, there's an even bigger reason. That's it, right there. This isn't just about geeky specs. Understanding your options, from memory to storage to everything in between, has a direct and sometimes massive impact on the bottom line. We're talking about efficiency, productivity, and maybe most importantly, avoiding really, really costly mistakes down the road. To really see how this all plays out, I want to tell you a story. We're going to follow the journey of a fictional company called QuickBiz Messengers. Their story is just a perfect example of how a business grows up, how it adapts, all through the hardware decisions it makes along the way. So when the founder, Andrew Langston, started QuickBiz, it was about as low tech as you can possibly get. Seriously, it was just him. Every single customer slip, every delivery log, it was all written by hand in a notebook. Now that works fine for one person, but as you can imagine, that is not a system that's built to grow. So business starts picking up, and Andrew hires his first employee, a bookkeeper named Sarah. And with her came the company's very first personal computer. They set up some basic software, word processing, spreadsheets. And this one PC, this single machine, was the first huge step in taming chaos. It was an absolute game changer. And what's wild is that first PC, at its core, works exactly the same way as the most powerful supercomputers on the planet. I mean it. Every computer, no matter how big or small, follows these four basic steps. It takes in data, that's input, like you typing. It stores that data. It thinks about it, that's processing. And then it gives you a result, that's output, like printing an invoice. Input, store, process, output. That's the blueprint for everything. So at the very heart of that processing stage is this little chip called the Central Processing Unit, or CPU. You've heard of it. It's the brain of the computer. Its speed is what determines how fast your apps run. It's the engine that interprets every single command and really, truly runs the whole show. So how does this brain actually think? Well, it does this little four-step dance called the machine cycle, and it does it billions of times a second. Think of it like a master chef following a recipe. First, it fetches the next instruction. Then it decodes it. Aha, I need to add flour. Then it executes the action. It actually adds the flour. And finally, it stores the result, noting that step is done. Fetch, decode, execute, store. That's the rhythm that powers everything your computer does. Okay, so when the CPU is fetching all those instructions, where does it get them from? Its main workspace is something called RAM, or random access memory. Think of this as the computer's super fast, short-term memory. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. It's volatile. That just means when you turn the power off, poof, everything in RAM is gone. It's like a temporary notepad that gets wiped clean every single time. All right, back to our story. QuickBiz was booming, which of course led to some serious growth pains. As they hired more messengers, they had more of these messy carbon copy forms floating around, and that created a whole new mess. Handwriting was hard to read, forms would get smeared in the rain, and poor Sarah in the office was buried in a mountain of slow manual data entry. It was a huge bottleneck. And of course, technology came to the rescue. QuickBiz got smart and equipped all of its messengers with handheld computers that had barcode readers. This is a perfect example of what's called a source data input device. So instead of writing stuff down for someone else to type in later, the data was captured right there at the source, the customer's doorstep. This move instantly got rid of errors and saved just countless hours of work. But you know how it goes. Solving one problem often creates a new one. All this beautiful, clean, accurate data was now pouring in from those handhelds. The single PC in the office just couldn't handle it. So QuickBiz was facing its next big question. How do you store, manage, and back up this growing mountain of valuable information? And the amount of data we're talking about these days is just staggering. To put it in perspective for you, just 1 terabyte of storage, which is pretty common in business today, is enough to hold over 1.5 million books. That is an enormous library of information to protect.
So QuickBiz's backup strategy grew up right alongside the technology. They actually started with magnetic tape. Yeah, tape. It was cheap and it held a ton of data, but trying to find one specific file was painfully slow. You literally have to wind through the whole tape to get to it. So eventually they upgraded to rewritable CDs and then DVDs, which gave them much faster, direct access to their files.
In this chart really breaks down those trade-offs perfectly. You've got your cheap, deep storage like tape, which is great for archives. Then you have the workhorse hard drives for all your day-to-day stuff. For things that need to be lightning fast, you've got solid-state drives, though they cost more. And of course, portable flash drives for moving data around. The key thing to remember is it's not about finding the single best one, it's about finding the right one for the job at hand. Now, to manage all this data and get everyone in the office connected, QuickBiz needed a central hub. So they bought a more powerful PC to act as a server. The server's only job was to hold all the company's information and serve it up to the other computers, the clients, whenever they needed it. So the QuickBiz story is a fantastic real-world example of how these hardware decisions directly fuel business growth. Now, let's take all the lessons from their journey and turn them into a practical toolkit that you can actually use. How can you make these same smart choices for your own team or company? This checklist right here covers the 6 essential questions you've got to ask. You've got the obvious ones, right? Power and compatibility. But don't forget the other stuff, like footprint. I mean, literally, how much desk space or server room space is this thing going to take up? And the really big ones are total cost of ownership. That includes support and upgrades, not just the sticker price, and scalability. You should always be asking, can this thing grow with us, or are we going to be right back here replacing it in a year? Now let's talk for a second about ergonomics, because this is an area that gets ignored way too often. Get this, the US Department of Labor estimates that an incredible 2/3 of all reported workplace injuries are linked to using a computer. 2/3. This isn't just about being comfortable, it's a massive business issue with real financial costs in lost productivity and workers' comp claims. So here's the bottom line. The hardware needs to fit the human, not the other way around. Simple things like an ergonomic keyboard that's split to fit the natural angle of your arms can prevent really debilitating and expensive injuries like carpal tunnel syndrome. It's not an expense, it's an investment in your people and in the health of your company. And that brings us to one last thought to leave you with. We've seen technologies just smash together, right? Our phones are now our cameras, our navigators, our computers. As this trend continues, what do you think is going to be the single most essential piece of hardware for business in the future? It's a really interesting question to think about as we all try to plan for what's coming next.